Welcome to the video on place value and divisibility by 2, 4, and 8. We are going to use the concept of place value to break numbers apart and put them back together in kind of different ways so that we can see the different techniques to see whether something's divisible by 2 or divisible by 4 or divisible by 8. First thing I'm going to do is break apart my 1848 to see if it is divisible by 2. So I'm going to call that 1 times 1000, because that's what it means when the 1 is in the thousands place, plus 8 times 100, plus 4 times 10, plus 8. And to further clarify, if I'm trying to divide this by 2, I'm going to change the 1000 to 500 times 2. So that's making it obvious that that is divisible by 2 because it can be broken up into a number times 2. Then I'm going to say 8 times 50 times 2 plus 4 times 5 times 2. And I'll call my 8 4 times 2. So I can see if I'm trying to divide this by 2, I actually have 500 2's plus 8 times 50 is 400. I have another 400 2's, and then 4 times 5 is 20. 20 2's, and then I have my plus 4 times 2. So I can see if I'm trying to divide by 2, I'm going to have 500 plus 400 plus 20 plus 4, or 924 2's. But the important thing is I can see that really all I need to look at is the last number, because I know all of the other numbers are going to be divisible by 2. Anything in the thousands place has to be divisible by 2, or the 1,000 has to be divisible by 2. So the thousands place doesn't really matter. 100 has to be divisible by 2, so the hundreds place doesn't really matter. 10 has to be divisible by 2, so the tens place doesn't really matter. I really just look at the last digit, because every other part of the number is divisible by 2. If I try to do that with 4, though, if I look at 34, if I try to divide that by 4, I find that it's not divisible by 4. That's because I cannot break 10 up into something times 4. 10 is not divisible by 4. So if I try to do 3 times, I actually have to do 3 times 2.5 times 4 plus 4, and I have a decimal, so it's not divisible by 4. And I cannot do that with the 4 because 10 is not divisible by 4. But if I think of it this way, 1 times 1,000 plus 8 times 100 plus 48. And then I think of my 1,000 as 1 times 250 times 4 plus 8 times 25 times 4 plus 48. It's obvious that the the thousands place and the hundreds place are divisible by 4. I really only need to check the 48. And I'll call that 12 times 4. So if I want to see if 1,848 is divisible by 4, if I want to divide it by 4, I'll say that I have 254s plus 8 times 250 times 4 plus 8 times 25, or 200 times 4 plus 12 times 4. And I can see that I'm divisible by 4 because when I divide by 4, I'm going to have 462 4s in 1,848. So I need to check the tens digit and the ones digit, the digit in the tens place and the ones place. I need to check both of those digits to see if it's divisible by 4, not just the last one. If I try to divide that by 8, if I take my 148 and put it in the calculator, even though the last two digits are divisible by 8, 6 times 8 is 48, the 100 if I try to take my 100 and call it something times 8, I end up with 12.5 times 8 plus 6 times 8. Once I have a decimal, it's not divisible. Divisible means you don't get a decimal. So if I want to see if I'm divisible by 8, I have to step it up a little bit. I have to look at the last 3 digits to see if it's divisible by 8. And I'm going to call this 1 times 1,000 plus 848. And I can then call the 1,000 125 times 8. So I just have to see if my 848 is divisible by 4. And it's pretty obvious in this case. I can call that 212. 206 times 8. So I know it's divisible by 8. But the question is, how would you normally check that 848? It's easy to do 800 divided by 8. It's easy to do 48 divided by 8. The quick way I do that, though, I take my 848 and I'm going to divide it by 2. If I want to divide something by 8, I can divide it by 2 and then divide it by 4. So I get 424. Then I'm going to see if my 424 is divisible by 4. So I have to divide it by 2 and then divide it by 4. I can now just take because I'm looking at divisibility by 4, I can take my 24 and divide it by 4. I can get 6. So I know that 24 is equal to 6 times 4. I know then that 848 is divisible by 2 and divisible by 4, so it's divisible by 8. So anyway, with 8, you need to check the last 3 digits, the hundreds place, the tens place, and the ones place.